Well, welcome back. This is video 8 of the 4.7 liter HO motor rebuild. Dodge Jeep Chrysler came out of a 2002 Jeep Grand Cherokee. I wanted to cover a couple things that I've been meaning to cover as I went along. First, I want to give props to Pete's Hot Rods. If you've never watched Pete's Hot Rods videos on YouTube on motors, how to build motors, how motors work, I would highly suggest you go look at his videos. I've used them a lot so far on this one. Then there was three things I need to cover I haven't covered previously and I forgot. First one is crankshaft in play. Crankshaft in play is a measurement that you take after the crankshaft's installed. Mains are all bolted down, and basically it's how much movement of the crankshaft do you have in this direction. It requires a magnetic micrometer, and I don't have one. I wasn't going to get one. Did a rough in-play measurement with a set of feeler gauges, and I was pretty confident that the in-play was okay and that my thrust washers were properly sized. That's kind of basically what you're looking for to make sure your thrust washers are right. And then the other one is ring orientation. Remember that on this motor, depending on whose rings you buy, the rings are going to have a non-symmetrical profile, which means there's a top and a bottom on the rings. So generally, if you get them and they say, look closely on both the compression rings and see if it says top, and if not, it might have a dot. The dot goes on the top. So don't forget that there is a correct direction for installing the rings on this motor. And then one other thing I was going to mention, I didn't show you when I did that piston install. One thing I did with every piston install was I checked to make sure I had good rotation of the motor after each install, whether it was the piston or whether it was the crank. Always check. With each additional component you put on the drive line, you're going to get more resistance, but it should still overall be easy to rotate the motor, and you should listen for any abnormal sounds or anything that could indicate that you have a piston that's not installed correctly, or a bearing that's jamming up or something of that sort. So again, we checked all the bearing clearances, so I'm pretty confident, and all the pistons slipped right in. I think in the last video I was installing the third piston, and I showed you how I tapped it down using a wooden handle on a hammer. And what I found on the next piston when I tried it, it went in just simply by hand. Just simply push it in, and it went right down into the piston. So don't hit it if you don't have to. Check and make sure whether you can slide it down or not. So from this point, we have slid the oil pump into place. It's not bolted yet. We're going to go ahead and put the oil pan gasket and it's called a windage tray, what I was calling earlier a splash plate, which is part of the oil pan gasket. We're going to install that. We're going to install the oil pickup tube, and we're going to go ahead and fill the oil pickup tube and oil pump with oil, try to get a little bit of a prime on it, and we'll get back with you when that's over. Thank you. Okay, well, we're back. We've got the windage tray and the oil pan gasket on. We've got the oil pickup tube on, going down to the oil pump. Haven't primed the oil pump. We'll do that next. And then we put the lower timing gear tensioner system on so that we could secure the oil pump. So the oil pump's installed, everything's tightened to manufacturer's specified torque, and we're fixing to go on with the oil pan. Now look, just as a suggestion, it's suggested in the manual, use some of the oil pan bolts to align the windage plate so that whenever you do put these on, you don't have a shift in the windage plate that makes it difficult to line up the oil pan. So I was appreciating that suggestion when I saw it. So that's what we got, and we're going to go with the oil pan, and we're going to work toward finishing the lower end of this motor. Talk to you in a bit. Well, when we left off, we were fixing to put on the oil pan gasket and the windage tray and the oil pump and those things. And you can probably tell by looking at the motor, we've pretty well done that. Here's the oil pump right back here. Remember, in order to install the oil pump, you have to install the idler tensioner system because it is integral. The oil pump bolts here and here are integral to holding the oil pump on. You can see I've already slid the main timing gear on there. You probably can't see it down inside there, but here's the oil pickup tube, and it's bolted to the oil pump, and of course we confirmed that the O-ring was in place there so that we wouldn't lose suction on oil. So we got the oil pan gasket on. We went and put the oil pump on, tightened everything to OEM specifications, and while we were there we went ahead and taped off some of these surfaces. We went and painted, or first primed and then painted the lower end of the unit. What I'm trying not to do is I'm going to try not to flip this thing back over, and I'm going to get oil in here pretty quick. And just to touch on that oil pump install, we did prime the oil pump by pouring oil into the pickup tube and then turning the engine over by hand until we had oil coming out several places, and so felt like we got a reasonable prime on that. Here in just a little bit, when I get the timing chain cover on, I'm going to go ahead and fill the motor with oil, and I'm going to turn it over by hand again, and then hopefully be able to draw oil up into the heads and make sure that we have a primed oil pump and everything is good. So anyway, lower half of the block is complete. I know I didn't show you every step, but it's pretty straightforward down there. Just installing the windage tray, the windage tray, and the gasket and the oil pan and pickup tube, those kind of things. Pretty easy. I'll say easy, maybe straightforward would be the right way to put it. So we flipped the motor over, and we're putting on heads. This particular head on this side has been installed. But remember, please do not reuse your head bolts on this motor. Throw them away, get new head bolts. This motor has a lot of torque procedure where it's torque plus an angle, and particularly on the heads it's not torque to yield, and so those bolts will tend to stretch. So we've got to replace those bolts anytime you take the heads off. They're not cheap, but doing it twice is a lot worse than spending a little extra money. Let's talk about timing real quick. Before you put these heads on, we said earlier this is an interference motor. So if you put those heads on and you don't have your cams in time with your crank and your pistons, then you're going to damage something just trying to get this thing in time after repairing damage that was very similar. So be sure first, top dead center here. A couple ways to tell. Obviously with the heads off you can tell when number one piston, which is up here, gets to top dead center. And then of course there's also, let's see if we can get a picture of it. There's also a dot right there. There's a dot on the timing chain. Of course the timing chain runs on this key to keep it from turning, but there's a dot on the timing chain which should be at the bottom when you're at top dead center. Then you need to make sure your cams are in position. Now these are the old cam gears. I've not yet got the new cam gears out. Just trying to save them the burden until it's time to install them. But if we can see on this little guy, there's a marking that says V8, and there's one over here that says right, one over here that says left, and there it says R. Now V8 must be on top, okay, and that's the case for both of these timing gears. V8 needs to be on top. So what I did was, since these were the old gears, I literally just took a pair of channel locks and rotated them until we were in the right position. This particular gear, you'll see the difference. This gear is just a gear. This gear also includes the target plate for the camshaft position sensor, which comes through this hole in the head and reads the position of the camshaft. So make sure that you have everything in alignment for timing before you ever start bolting those heads down. Otherwise you're going to have to take those heads off, which if you do it right will cost you a new gasket, new set of head bolts, whole 9 yards. So Don't want to do that twice. So please be careful. Let's talk about the bolts on the head. There are 10 bolts on the head. See if we can see them here. It's a series of 5 down this length, and at the top there's an equivalent 5. There's one back in here. Then there are 4 smaller bolts. These 4 smaller bolts, 2 of them, on this head at least, 2 of them are exterior. Well, actually on both heads, 2 are exterior, and then 2 of them, forgive me, let's see, this isn't working. 2 of them are down inside. There's one, and there's the other. They're down inside the pathway for the timing chain. Okay? Those bolts, 10 millimeter, these bolts, 15 millimeter. These bolts get torqued, and then twice you put 90-degree angles on them. There'll be a lot of grunting involved. Man, it takes a lot to get those things turned 90 degrees twice. These bolts, however, are only torqued to initially 10 foot-pounds and then ultimately 19 foot-pounds, so it doesn't take much to tighten those. These bolts must have sealer added. Okay, must have sealer added or you're going to leak fluids. So let me show you here where it's, I didn't have it open. The new small bolts actually came with some what looked like a blue sealer dried onto the threads. I went ahead and added additional sealer to that. And so remember that if you fail to seal these, you're going to potentially have water leaks. Get this thing right. You can potentially have water leaks. In this case, it would fall into your oil pan because this is a clear path down, an oil return path down, and this goes right into the oil pan right in here. So, all right, be real careful. Seal those bolts. Other 10. Follow torque procedure. The gaskets, just for reference, these are MLS gaskets, multi-layer steel gaskets. They are not forgiving at all. You must get it right on the first go round, or you're going to be buying new bolts and gaskets, like I said. So when you get them on, be sure they hit the dowels, and then as you tighten the bolts up in this little guy, tighten them up evenly all the way around until you get good seating on the head gasket, and that's before you ever even start your torque procedure. So, all right, well, I think I'm going to terminate this video at this point. We'll finish getting these heads on, try to get the valve gaskets installed, get the timing system installed. And once the timing system's installed, we'll put the valve gaskets on, valve covers on, and the timing cover, and then we're probably going to move forward to finish painting the motor. So I'll get back with you later. Thank you.